All right, if this is your first time visiting the channel, this is a small mobile home, a tiny home project I picked up. It's a 12 by 32. I bought this from my neighbor, the repo guy, who is a Facebook marketplace bandito. I purchased this from him for $6,000, and this is one of those deals that you kind of can't pass up. I've never had a mobile home, a manufactured home, whatever you'd like to call it. He towed it from a storage lot to my home with his wrecker, and we pigtailed my 34,000 pound track loader to get it to the top of the hill. It's 150 foot of elevation change from the road to the top of the hill, so we managed to get it up here safely. And it's just been sitting here since June, and I guess I didn't actually get started working on it till like a couple of days before Christmas. So yeah, I went to Home Depot, picked up a pallet of blocks so that I could get this thing, set up and leveled up. I went and got some gravel. My utility trailer is not a dump trailer, but my track loader can turn it into a dump trailer. So yeah, I got this thing, set up, and I've got all different kinds of levels. And apparently this water level, I'm going to do a video on that later. A water level, look it up. There's a lot of decent videos on that out here. But that was like the perfect tool for this. You might think a laser level or something like that might be decent, but this was the way to go. And I would say its accuracy is down to probably like 1/8 of an inch. Now, this is not where I plan on keeping it. It's just kind of where we parked it. And I was like, I'm going to get this thing leveled up so when I work on it, it's not all wonky and anything that I do, ends up out of whack. But yeah, so it's good and level, and I'm getting ready to get cracking on this thing. So if you don't know, I'm off grid in Eastern Tennessee. This was a big plus for me. This was in a RV park setting. It had a 50 amp plug, so I got a 50 amp to 30 amp plug for my generator. That's where I get my power from. And one thing I forgot to mention, this thing was under a carport ever since it was brand new. I probably would not have bought this thing if it wasn't for that fact. The inside's kind of gross. I think it was like an older lady who was living in here, and it seemed like there was like a bit of a rodent problem with like mice or whatever. But knowing that this thing wasn't in the weather all that time was kind of the redeeming factor for me. All right, so now I've got power on all the 110 volt circuits, which is awesome. I've been living off grid for about 3 years now in 2 different tiny houses that I've made. And I use a generator for electric, so I have had electric, but nothing was like permanently wired in. So I've not been able to just plug stuff into an outlet or turn a sink on or anything like that. So I'm just kind of looking forward to just being able to plug something into the wall or turn a light on. That's going to be great. But now we've got another issue, the weather. It's the middle or the beginning of winter, and it's been very cold in there, and you can see where the lows were on that little, thermometer thing that shows the highs and the lows. So now I'm like cracking into this HVAC system. I don't know anything about mobile homes, but I came to find out that it's 220 volt, electric heat, and the blower motor itself is a 220 volt motor. I don't have 220 with my generator. It's just 110 volts, so I can't use any of this. But I would like to put a blower motor in there that works on a 110 volt circuit. Don't worry, the dog's not get shocked. Both of the breakers are turned off, but you can see all the wiring for that electric heat system. So what I'm going to do is delete all of that and then turn this 220 volt circuit into a 110 volt circuit. I've soldered that on there and shrink wrapped it. I probably should have used what I'm going to call a mechanical connector there, but it is what it is. You can see there's the breaker. We've got the dual phase, 210 volt wires that make it 220. So now I'm turning that wire into a neutral wire and putting it on the neutral bus bar. And I did label that later on. So if I sell this and somebody gets in there, they can understand what's going on. I did use an appropriate breaker for the breaker box. It's the same brand that's in there. And I put another breaker in to help fill that slot so like somebody couldn't stick their finger into the box. So now, how are we going to get some heat? A buddy of mine sends me all kinds of silly stuff, and then one day he sent me a link about this Vevor diesel heater. Some people call them a parking heater. This thing really intrigued me. I think it's cool. These things basically run off of diesel fuel, and all they really need is a 12-volt power input. So you could use a car battery or you tie it into your solar system, whatever the situation is. But people use these in motorhomes. They use them on boats. If you watch Bering Sea Gold, it's interesting because that Emily Rydell girl, I guess, has broken away from that show, and she's actually retrofitting one of these heaters into her dredge. So I thought that was pretty cool. I just started watching her YouTube. So back to this heater, I wanted to kind of just do what I'm going to call a non-invasive install, putting it in a place to where it was going to permanently alter the structure or any of the functionality of it. So we could just test it out and see if this thing works. I had heard good stuff about it. This mobile home, I guess, never had the AC hooked up to it. This is what they call a return AC vent, and it was never utilized. So I kind of just drilled the bottom out of that return air duct box and retrofitted this thing in there. I originally had it just pulling the ambient air from outside, and I thought I could make it more efficient by having it just use the air from the inside. So that little wooden box you see is what I'm going to call a return air duct, and you can see that oval cut. That's where it pulls air from the inside and just reheats it instead of just heating cold air from the outside. There's the fuel tank. It holds 2 gallons. And yeah, it's pretty neat. It's been working well. The temperatures haven't got low enough for me to really put it to the test at this point. So my real motivation behind getting heat in there is to be able to utilize the plumbing that's in there. You can see I've got this Jolka Hot Tap Nomad kit. I've been using this for 3 years for showers and washing dishes and everything. And it will work in the cold, but it's a little bit of a chore. And you can see, it's freezing out. You can see icicles on everything. And you know what? I'm not saying it's more trouble than it's worth, but after 3 years of messing around, that's like using an actual water heater. And luckily, this thing's a 1500 watt unit. It holds like 19 gallons, and it's 110 volts, so I can power that off the generator, no problem. Now the next issue is I don't actually have water ran up here. There's what I'm going to call public water line that goes from the road to a meter, and then it goes 150 foot of elevation change to the top of the hill. And I've got a box up there that I've just been hooking a garden hose to. So when it's the winter, the hose is freezing, thawing, you got to drain it. It's just a big old hobo mess. So what I really want to do is just run some water line to code, which is like 18 inches down here. I decided to go 24 because the machine would go that deep, and I figured it would kind of stabilize the input water temperature a little bit more, which would make it more efficient for heating the water and stuff like that. So that's what I'm doing. Now, I've never used a trencher before. I've realized that getting weekend rentals is the way to go. I could pick this thing up at 1 o'clock on a Friday, and I had to have it back by like 10 or 11 on a Monday. Some places, if you go over a day's hours, they'll charge you more, but I don't know that this place had done that, and if they did, they didn't tell me. I'll have to look up my credit card receipt. But this is a mess, man. It took me 16 hours to trench in 275 foot of water line just because of the soil conditions. They say these things aren't meant for rock, but that's what I got. And it's not really like chunky rock, but it's like, I don't even know. I'm not a geologist. But I can tell you this, it took a long time, and Sunday morning at 6 o'clock, I was out there trying to get this wrapped up, and I managed to get it done. So the day I finished, we were getting ready to hit a cold snap, and it was like below freezing by 11 o'clock. So I had to get that unit cleaned up and back to the rental place on Monday morning. So I just started on like some of this duct work. This mobile home stuff, I'm not used to this, but it's just like poor design, poor materials, poor craftsmanship. And like these ducts are what they call duct board, but it's not like some of the newer stuff I'd seen where it's just a smooth surface, like kind of like the foam insulation, and it was basically just going to be blowing down on what looks like insulation to me. And I'm like, this thing is just going to be stirring up a bunch of dust and nastiness. So I did a little cleanup work in there with some, I guess it would be like Flexline insulation coating. Now I've got my retrofit blower motor in there. This is a 12-inch AC Infinity Cloudline blower motor. A lot of people use these in like marijuana growing or in HVAC retrofits. This thing is Bluetooth. You can see everything by your phone and make adjustments. It's pretty cool. Like it shows you the temperature, the humidity, and all this stuff. So you can get in there and nerd out if you really want. And it blows like 1600 CFM. So it's pretty much as good, if not better, than what was in there originally. It pulls less power. And it's super quiet too. And it was like $400. All right, so now we've got the diesel heater. We can circulate the air. The water lines run. You can see here I got a shutoff valve, and then the red one is a drain valve. I've just hooked up to the existing plumbing on this mobile home. I bought this as is, where is, and it was cheap, so look what you get. A bunch of busted lines. That's what basically goes to the water heater. It's the hot supply, or I'm sorry, the cold supply line. The hot out, what goes to the ice maker for the refrigerator. And like you can see, like this is a newer water heater, and it's just, the plumbing's all cobbled in there. And you can see where the refrigerator water supply blew all over the place. It didn't soak the heater, but it got over there. And yeah, so now we're back to square one. Like we've got water to it. We've made that step forward, but the plumbing's a bunch of garbage. It's CPVC. Now, I would normally just replumb this whole thing in PEX. I would prefer to have an on-demand propane water heater, but this thing looks pretty new. They're worth like $400, so I figured, let's see if this thing works. I can verify that it works, make a little video for people on plumbing repairs, and maybe just resell the water heater for like $200. So away we go on that whole idea. I take a look around on this thing, and like this is the underbelly. Like if you know about mobile home stuff, then just tune me out. But like this is the trailer construction. So you've got like this vapor barrier, and then all the insulation is just kind of set in there. And like this is where you can see, like, I don't know what's been in there, but you can see the insulation's all tore up and trampled down. Was it a raccoon? Was it possum? Was it a cat? I don't know. But something was in there. The insulation's trashed. It's no good. All of this needs to be redone. And you've got options, which is basically pull the plywood up, retain your underbelly, or just cut the underbelly out and then redo all the insulation and then, reestablish the underbelly. But something's got to be done there. It is what it is, man. You get stuff for cheap, and this is what you get. I built a little box for the water shutoff. Okay, so here I've just deleted the water supply for the refrigerator. I don't need that ice maker, and I can add it later if I want. So we've got new hot and cold supply lines. I changed where it hooks up to the water heater there. That other fitting was just garbage. So I'm just this is what you would do as a repair job. Okay, so I've not replaced everything. I've replaced just enough to hopefully make it work without leaking. So let's talk about this CPVC or PVC. This stuff, the CPVC is super cheap, okay? And this stuff's easy to do. Like, I'm not saying that, like, any old Karen can do this, but you probably could. You got just some basic products, You've got, like, your metal threaded pipe, your National pipe sealer right there. You got the primer, you got the glue. They make a glue that does CPVC and PVC, so I'm just using that one because this is CPVC. But, like, this is something that people can do. Like, you can do this. The stuff just fits together. Watch another video that goes more in depth on the plumbing stuff, but you just prime your connections, then you glue the connections, and you connect them, kind of in a specific way, and then everything's good to go. But the drawback is you've got to wait like 2 hours at 60 degrees before you can throw water pressure to this thing. So the whole timeline thing is a problem. So that's one big plus with the PEX, is that you can do a repair with the system still being wet. You just put your fittings in, you clamp them, and then, now this is after the repair that I did. You can see there's a bunch of water shooting out of where it goes to the sink. Like, we didn't see that before because it was dumping all of the water out by the water heater. The sink is leaking, you know what I mean? That's not going to fly. You're constantly having water running there. There's a bunch of water leaking out of the toilet, okay? And look how they have the supplier line ran. Like, this is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever seen. It's just all cobbled together from the factory. Look how that steps over to the tub. Like, why would you do that? Like, somebody's going to step on that and break it, and the toilet tank is cracked. That's why the water's leaking all over the floor. So I'm guessing that maybe this old lady passed away and it still had water to it and things froze. And, like, you know, the toilet tank broke and all the pipes broke. Or I don't know what the story is behind this, but there's definitely a story to be had here. So, you know, we're back to the drawing board again, and I'm trying to just see, like, where are the rest of these leaks? Do I need to just cut my losses and redo this in PEX, or are we going to just try to do another repair? So I'm draining the water tank here, and, you know, you can see it's leaking from the supply lines for the sink. And, you know, the one nice thing about the plumbing work is that, you know, if you need to keep doing repairs, you can keep doing repairs. Like, everywhere you have a connection is a potential failure point. So I'm not saying you just want to keep sectioning stuff together, but if, like, you're in an emergency situation or you're just trying to do some DIY stuff, you can't afford a plumber or whatever it is, like, this is something that you can do on your own. So now it's time to replace the sink faucet. I've got the repair done. I've deleted the supply line for the toilet. That stuff goes under the bathroom sink. That's where the leak was last time. This is where I repaired stuff going to the water heater previously. So, yeah, you know, I'm not going to be using the toilet, so that's why I deleted that supply line. We're just, you know, trying to get this plumbing working, and I can add that later. Like I said, you can keep doing re-repairs or add it in. I've got the new faucet in, you know, that's nice. I've got a soap dispenser now, and, like, the sink's dirty. You know, it's not nasty, but I wouldn't want to wash my dishes in there the way it is. You can see that's one of the nuts for these, I guess, compression fittings that was broke. You know, there was a leak right there at that connection. You can see things are put together pretty poorly, and it's kind of gross under the sink. So I'm just going to put in some new strainers and some new seals and, you know, clean the sink up. You know, I used like a brass wire brush and lacquer thinner. Didn't spend much time on it, and that cleaned up pretty nice. So, like, we didn't need to replace the sink, but we did need to replace the faucet and then these strainers. And you can see they're very close in height. So I can put these new strainers in and still use the existing plumbing. Now, you can see there's a rubber seal on the strainer. That's what you want. You could use plumber's putty, but that's garbage. To me, that black rubber seal is like a lifetime seal. And, yeah, so you can see these gaskets are shot. You know, what came with the strainer won't work, but I did get some of those gray gaskets, or what is appropriate. That is where that compression fitting goes together. I showed you earlier. I got a new nut there. So we got a new seal there, and that nut, that was a leak before. The new strainers are in. And right now, everything, you can't tell, but everything is just loose fit here. You kind of got to do what I'm going to call a tighten down sequence. You don't want to just go at it wherever. So everything's together. It's not even snug, but it's, you know, just kind of loosey-goosey, all in place. And the way I like to do this, and I'm not a professional plumber, but it makes sense to me personally, is I want to start from the top with the strainers, okay? And that's what we're going to do here. But like you can see, everything's in place, everything's loose. So you see from the top how these strainers are centered into the sink basin. So I've got these things tightened up now. You can see they're centered. That's a good place to start. You want your seal to seal good. So they're tight. Now I can tighten the compression nuts that go to those, and then I can tighten that nut in the middle, and then I'm going to go down to the white nut and the other black nut. So it's like kind of a sequence. So this is weird. You can see the tub's cut out. I was told that the lady that was living in here couldn't get her leg up, so somebody used the Sawzall to cut the tub out to where she could get in there and get showers. So that was the old sink knob. You know, $30 for a new faucet that, you know, doesn't feel weird on your hand. It's metal, it's not plastic. That's a no-brainer, you know what I mean? And the sink basin's plastic, so you got to use I guess you got to use like a plug because it doesn't have some of the other stuff. And then once I got all this done and pressurized up, you can see that line just completely blew off of the kitchen sink. I guess it was a poor connection. So it just kind of never seems to stop. You know, it's completely soaked under the sink. You know, that's 1/2 inch CPVC. So by the time that I saw what was leaking and I got outside to shut the water off, I mean, not a ton of water get in here, but it's enough to make a mess. And it's just a little disappointing, you know, like we're striking out. You can see that that's the cold side and that's what goes to the sink. It's just poorly done. Okay. Somebody just like took a hammer and just kind of went through there. Yeah, so now I've kind of just redone that. I put a piece of plywood in there to cover the holes up. I did make a mistake though. When I replumbed the cold side over here, okay, I don't know how, but I didn't see the soap line. You can see I just pointed at that. So now I can't put the soap dispenser in because that valve is in the way. So I'm going to have to remove that and scoot it over, but it's fine. So, you know, we're retesting the plumbing now. I've got this new faucet in, okay? That thing's working fine, and it's not a weirdo plastic knob that you don't feel like touching. We still have that old, you know, plastic sink basin in, but, you know, none of the drains are leaking. I put new seals in there. Nothing's leaking under there. That's where I tied that plumbing repair into. And so this is good news, you know? Now we're going over to this tub that's all cut up, and it's got the original fixture. You know, I had a shower head. Everything's working there. Don't like the faucet fixture, but it is what it is. None of this is leaking. That's good news. So let's go over to the breaker here. You probably can't hear it, but, you know, I turn it on and you can hear the load change on the generator. All right, so that's good news. So, like, the water heater is working. And, you know, that's the RV 50 amp connector that goes to the mobile home. You know, it wasn't a campground. And then that's the power wire from my tiny house. And you can see this thing's pulling, you know, 1500-ish watts. And, you know, I've got the water running here. And I'm just going to kind of do a base test on this hot water heater situation. See what is our input temperature before the water heater is running. And you can see it's kind of like, you know, 51, 52 degrees is, you know, I guess the ground temperature of the water going into the water heater. And I kind of want to see, like, how long does it take for this thing to heat up the 19 gallons to whatever it's thermostatically set to on the water heater. And I just tried the hot side and it was like, hey, you know, 50, 58, 59-ish degrees within a very short period of time, maybe like 15, 20 minutes. It looks like this fixture is leaking, and this is a mobile home fixture. Fortunately, the local Home Depot does sell these down here. I also decided to check what the thermostat was set on. It was on 120. I turned it up to 140. I guess the highest it goes is 150. My thought was maybe I'll have it at 140 or 150 because if I've only got 19 gallons, but it's a higher heat level, I won't have to use as much water, and maybe it'll go further. So yeah, I'm going to see how long this thing takes to heat up at that temperature. This here is the latest repair. The last failure I had was the hot water side blowing off just before the compression fitting for the hot water side of the sink. So that's cleaned up. Now, this is actually Sunday morning about 10 o'clock. You can see I still have a lot of heat left in this water heater. It's been turned off since Friday night around 9 o'clock. It took about 3 hours for it to warm up, but it seems to hold heat pretty good, so that's exciting. Now, we went from this at the water heater, pretty ugly, to this, and that's pretty clean. So sometimes, you get a project like this and you think that, you're just going to blow through it and it's going to be no big deal. Not that this was the hugest deal in the world, but like the plumbing thing was a little disappointing. I wasn't expecting all of those lines to be, frozen and broken or whatever, but that's fine. We had some wins. The whole heater situation, that Vevor diesel heater was awesome. I switched that, over to that 110 blower motor, and it's got that Bluetooth control and tells you your humidity and has different settings. That thing's pretty cool, and I didn't really have any issues putting that in or setting it up. But the plumbing thing, that was a mess. That was the first leak there, coming from underneath of the water heater. I got that patched up, and then, that was a real sprayer there under the bathroom sink. And yeah, it was a little shocking. And then I got past that. And the next leak that I ended up having after I thought everything was going to be all right was, the toilet. The toilet tank was cracked. And, at that point, you may as well just replace the toilet as a whole unit. And I didn't care for that supply line. So, cutting that out actually made me happy. And the last leak I had was that right there, which was after I thought everything was okay and we were good to go. That hot line kind of had a CPVC glue joint failure at that 90, and it just blew off like a garden hose. And, it's a 1/2 inch line, so it does flow a little bit of water. I got it shut off quick enough. It actually kind of startled me. So, yeah, whatever. Now the whole plumbing situation seems to be under control, and, that's all fine and well. So, you can see there's no insulation, back before the plumbing. I guess a lot of that had been tore down because, somebody realized that there was all these plumbing problems, or, that was spraying water out from underneath, and they pulled that down. I didn't know what was going on. I just suspected that there might be a plumbing problem because a lot of that insulation was pulled down. So I'm going to have to re-insulate all of this area and kind of redo the underbelly. That way, this stuff doesn't freeze up and break again. So, and then if I want to use any of this plumbing, I also have to hook up these drain lines, and I do have some stuff to do that. So yeah, we'll be moving forward on this project. Not a ton of progress in this video, maybe not the most interesting thing in the world, but at least you can kind of see what's going on.